What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL record prediction for the 2020 NFL regular season. In this video, I'm going to break down the NFC East champions from a year ago, the Eagles' schedule for the 2020 season, let you know who I think they will beat, who I think they will lose to. Each game a prediction, whether they will win or whether they will lose, and look at what their record will be in 2020. Look at if they will win the NFC East again in 2020, or if they'll come up a little bit short, if they'll make the playoffs. I'm going to fill you in on my thoughts on the Eagles and their game-by-game matchups for the 2020 season. Before I break down their schedule, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion, Eagles fans. Let me know if you believe the Eagles are going back to the playoffs and if you think they will win the NFC East again this season. All right, let's take a look at their schedule. Starting off in week number 1, it is the Eagles and it is the Washington Redskins. The Redskins, I think they're a team that's not going to shy away from anybody because they have a new coach, a tough coach in Ron Rivera. They have a much better coaching staff overall, and they have a really awesome front seven defensively, but that doesn't mean they'll have a good team. And I'll get to that in the Redskins breakdown, but overall, I do think the Eagles are the much better, more talented, more proven, better quarterback, really improved defense, and I think the Eagles typically start off the season pretty strong in week 1, and I think a lot of that has to do with Doug Peterson. So I'm going to take the win here with the Eagles. They're not learning a new system offensively, defensively. Washington is. So I'm going to take the Eagles in week 1. They play the Rams at home in week 2. I think this is a mismatch for the Rams. When you look at it, the Eagles, offensively, defensively, they're one of the few teams offensive line-wise that can block Aaron Donald and that defensive line. And then defensively, they are one of the few teams that you do not want to mess with on the defensive line. And overall, the Rams still have not fixed their interior offensive line. And I just think Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson and Hargrave and all these boys are just going to be after Jared Goff. And he's going to have no time to throw. It might be disastrous. It might be a blowout. I'm going with the Eagles in week 2. Week 3, they play the Bengals. Again, I think the Bengals are more talented than people want to give them credit for. I think they have a lot of good skill position players and a sneaky good defense. But I do think that the Eagles are going to dominate their offensive line. Again, I mean, the Rams can't block. The Bengals can't block. Similar story there. And I think it's another win. Week 4, they play San Francisco. This is going to be a really good game. I could see them potentially picking up the upset victory here. It is in San Francisco, though, so it's going to make it difficult for them to win. The thing I really look at is I don't know if the Eagles have the weapons on the outside. Like, yes, they improved their receiving group, but they don't really have like 1 or 2 receivers that necessarily scare you if you're the 49ers. Now, I do think the Eagles, similarly to the Chiefs, can give you issues with their speed down the field, just like the Chiefs did to San Francisco. So there's a possibility there. And then the Eagles, they could defend the run quite well versus San Francisco. So this is an interesting game. I could see them winning this game, but it is versus the 49ers. It is versus Kyle Shanahan. And I don't know. I just figure the 49ers at home are going to find a way to win this game. Everything tells me that this game will be very close and competitive. And I actually think if I'm the 49ers, one of the teams I don't want to see in the playoffs is probably the Eagles because they won't be afraid of you. But the 49ers are so fast on defense from their front seven, and they're so dominant on their defensive line that they'll stalemate the Eagles up front in the run game at the very least. And yeah, I don't know if Carson Wentz is going to have a whole lot of success versus defense. It's going to be interesting, but I think the 49ers will squeak it out. Probably a defensive game. Week 5, they play the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. I think this is another similar matchup. The 49ers and the Steelers are both 2 teams that I feel, this is a stalemate up front. These are 2 teams that are dominant with their offensive and defensive lines. I think I'm just siding with the home team here. I think the Eagles are kind of unfortunate because they play some of these really good teams on the road. Like they play Pittsburgh, who I think is a top 5 AFC team. They play the 49ers, which I think are a top 3 NFC team. They do play Baltimore at home, which they're fortunate for that, but they play like a team like Green Bay and Dallas, and they play New Orleans still. They play Cleveland. Some of these games are on the road. Some of these games are at home. I'm not sure how much the fans are going to be a factor, if there's going to be fans in the stadium or not. But I just think familiarity with being at home is a big deal, and weather as well. But I don't know. I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins. I could easily see the Eagles winning that game. It's kind of a flip-the-coin-esque type of game. But, Heinz Field's tough, and Ben is back. I think they can move the ball slightly. And, the Eagles, it's tough. It's really tough. Like, maybe they can attack them with their tight ends, down the field. But we'll have to see. I'm just siding with the home teams here. Week 6, they play Baltimore. I think they will win one of these games. They probably lose 2. Whether they lose to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, I think they'll probably lose 2 of these games and win one of them. So you can kind of pick the one that you think they most likely will win. I'm going to say they beat the Ravens, and the reason being is, unlike Pittsburgh or San Fran, I've not really seen Baltimore be able to pass the ball when trailing in a game. And I think the Eagles are, really, really good at game planning and coming in with a approach to a game and stylistically changing from week to week. And I think with the Eagles, what they can do to you is they can attack Baltimore with their tight ends, which Baltimore has great corners, but not necessarily great tight end stoppers. And then they could probably run the ball a little versus Baltimore. And then defensively, like I said, versus Pittsburgh and San Fran, they'll stalemate you at the line of scrimmage and stop the run. And they're one of the few teams that can probably slow down Lamar and the Baltimore rushing attack. And if they do get a lead at home, it's going to be difficult for Baltimore to come back. So I will say that the Eagles win that game. They play the Giants on Thursday. This is a game that's sneaky, okay? The Giants, I actually have them upsetting their first matchup versus Dallas. I also have them upsetting their first matchup versus the Eagles. And here's the reason why. Okay, while the Giants versus Dallas, the first game will be Jason Garrett revenge, this game is a Thursday night game. But think about this schedule. So you play San Fran, Pittsburgh, and Philly, and then you come on a Thursday night game versus a rival in the Giants, who the Giants have played you quite well over the years. I think the Giants do find a way to move the ball and win this game, kind of probably a higher scoring, sneaky victory, last second victory, upset type of game. It's on a Thursday, which is always wacky, but you're physically going through 3 games in a row versus 3 of the most physical, tough teams in the league. San Fran, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. They're going to beat you up. You're going to be really sore and just physically tired going into this game versus a rival. And then Saquon is going to hit you up the gut 3 times, and you're probably going to have to defend that, and he's probably going to break 1. So, that's the way I look at it. That's why I think that game is a really sneaky one on the Eagles schedule. Then you look at week 8, they play Dallas at home on Sunday night. I think they'll beat Dallas the first time they play them. I think they'll lose to Dallas in week 16 the second time. I think either way, they'll end up splitting these games. What you don't want if you're an Eagles fan is probably that they lose, from week 4 to week 8 for these games. Like, that would be unfortunate. If they lose this game to Dallas, then you're kind of in trouble going into the bye week. But at least you can regroup. So I do think that they'll come back after a Thursday nighter, kind of disappointing loss. They'll come back and win versus Dallas and go in the bye week and then get their revenge on New York in week 10. Then week 11, they go to Cleveland, which I think will be a tough game. It's going to really challenge their secondary, but I do think the Eagles will find a way to win that game. And then week 12, they play Seattle on Monday Night Football. They have just not been very good versus Russell Wilson and the Seahawks these last couple outings. So I'm going to say the Seahawks win. Although that the Eagles now have a couple more corners that will help them defend the receivers the Seahawks have, which was really their issue the first 2 games they played them. Week 13, they play Green Bay. This is another primetime-esque matchup. You play, again, this is a really tough schedule, guys. You play Cleveland. In Cleveland, you play Monday Night Football versus Russell Wilson. Then you play Sunday versus Aaron Rodgers. Then you go Week 14 versus Drew Brees. Then you play Kyler Murray in Kyler Murrayville. And then you go to Dallas. I mean, this is tough. Like, this is not easy. I think this is a much more difficult schedule than what Dallas has because this is a first place schedule. And then you play week 13 versus Green Bay. This is tough. I don't know if Green Bay is going to beat you or not. I'm kind of like in between. I don't really know. So they have 5 losses right now. I think either one of these, they're going to lose one of these games. I don't know if it's going to be to Green Bay or if it's going to be the Saints. I'm going to say they lose to Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers has a big game here in Lambeau Field, and they come back and beat the Saints at home. And then they beat Arizona. That's going to be tough too. But I do think that the Eagles are just a more well-rounded team. I think when you play Arizona, they'll be able to I think, win the line of scrimmage. And that ultimately, no matter how much of a baller Kyler Murray is, that's hard to overcome. Week 14, they played the Saints, and I didn't really dive into that game. I just think, in Philly at that time of the year, it's possibly going to be snowing or rainy or windy, and just Drew Brees isn't very good in those type of games. And at the same time, you look at the rest of their roster, and the Eagles played them really well a couple years ago in the playoff game where they really should have won that game, and that was undermanned. I kind of think back to that matchup and feel like it's fairly similar. Plus, Darius Slay, you can match up with Michael Thomas, which you're not going to be totally overwhelmed like you might have been in the past. And yeah, I just feel like the Eagles can go in there, and they're one of the few teams that can have a game plan to slow down the Saints but also move the ball. And they're not going to be totally out-coached, and they're also at home. Then week 16, I have Dallas winning that game. I just think Dallas at home, it's tough, and they have so many weapons. You're not going to beat them twice in a row, in my opinion. Week 17, they play Washington. They'll finish out the season with a win. So ultimately, I have the Eagles 10-6. I have them going 6-2 at home and splitting on the road, and 7-5 in the conference. I right now have them as the wild card team coming out of the NFC East. I have the Cowboys winning the NFC East at 11-5, and the Eagles finishing second in the NFC East at 10-6. But when breaking down my NFC, I think they will have one of the top 5 records in the NFC when it's all said and done. I could see the Cowboys going as good as 13-3. I could probably see the Eagles going as good as 12-4, and probably the Eagles they probably have a higher floor. I think the Eagles could possibly go, as low as 8-8 or 9-7. And I think the same is with the Cowboys, but you never know with the Cowboys because they tend to choke sometimes. You guys know that. But I do think if both teams are really good this year, which I think it's a 2-man race for the NFC East, the Cowboys have the higher of the 2 ceilings, and that's the way I look at it. All right, guys, if you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL breakdowns just like this, and comment below your opinion. Let me know what you think the Eagles' record will be in 2020. It's Mitch. Peace.